Welcome to another episode of the 20s Survival Guide. This is your host, Emily, and today we are here with Abby Foster. And if you guys may not know who Abby is, she's the founder and CEO of Elent, Financial Education, and a chartered accountant who basically recognised a gap in financial literacy amongst the younger generation. And you're here to empower us with financial knowledge and basically help manage our finances, help us do that.
Yeah, that is the aim. I did some research with your podcast because I love it, and everyone looks super relaxed, like sat on a bed, and so I'm giving you like relaxed vibes today, and then I feel you've come really smart.
We've changed roles.
Yeah, I'm usually really smart, but I thought, well, seeing as it's your podcast and everyone looked really relaxed, I wasn't going to offer up the bed to do the podcast, but
no, this is pretty relaxed. This is how we like to do it. I thought I'd actually polish up for once instead of look like I'm just come out of bed, but you don't look like that at all. Today on this episode, this is going to be really important, and it's probably going to be the most important and useful episode, I think, because one of the things that you have to worry about when you leave uni is how to manage your student debt, student finance, and Abby is here to help us. Firstly, why don't you tell us how you decided to start your own business?
Yeah, so a long time ago, back at school age, I actually decided to start a little beauty business, which was very rogue.
I didn't know that.
No, I don't really usually tell many people, but I did spray tanning. I trained to do spray tanning and a few other things, and took that with me to uni, and that was actually my first ever business.
I bet you were so popular. Everyone needs a good spray tan or fake tan.
Especially
it's a ritual weekly thing.
My uni era was just kind of the Towie era as well, like the only way is Essex, where tans were very, very important. I was also a cheerleader at uni, so I looked after my society by giving them the obviously glow up that they needed.
I need that. You guys probably can't see, but it's time to change the fake tan. It really is.
I'm saying nothing. I think you look healthy.
I just keep my elbows together so that you don't actually have to see, the white patch. But summer is coming and I will be getting a real tan. So.
Oh, lucky. See, I've never tanned. I try so hard and just not the sort of person that does tan.
Neither am I though. I'm half Lebanese and half British, but my skin is just completely fair.
Hence why I spray tan. So that was my first ever business at uni, and I did that throughout uni just to make extra money. And I always knew I had this kind of passion inside me for the injustice of things like the inequality gap, so like the gender pay gap, the gender pension gap. And I was always livid by the situation, even down to my degree. I was one of very few women to actually end up graduating on my course. I had a very masculine course, so I did accountancy and banking. It was very, very male heavy. And I wanted to see a difference, and I started my first job. I got into my second and third job in a very, very female-based industry. So I worked in the glossy magazine world. So I used to work for Condé Nast, which owns Vogue, and then I work at Hearst, which owns Harper's Bazaar. So both wonderful brands, but very female-led. And they had, we were reporting the gender pay gap, but I didn't feel like we were doing enough to actually fix it. So when I qualified ACA a couple of years ago, I started thinking, right, what do I actually want to do with this qualification? What do I want to be? And I always wanted to start something on my own. I suppose I was quite naive, and I thought, well, why wouldn't this work? I wanted to start teaching finance, and I looked around and I was like, well, why is no one teaching this at school? And the people that weren't doing it in a big enough way. Yeah. And I said, well, why wouldn't this work? I'll just give it a go. And I kind of came up with the idea of the business, came up with the name, and just honestly went to schools and said, do you want me to teach finance? And I was incredibly lucky because schools just said yes. They had so much trust in the situation.
Then maybe the naivety was a good thing because it kind of masked all of the potential worries, and you just had enough confidence to be like, let's just do this blindly.
Yes, and that comes with passion. You often see when people have enough passion in something, you don't worry as much about if it's going to work because it has to work. Yeah. And for me, it always had to work. So I started Elent well over 2 years ago now, and it started off just teaching finance in schools. Then we started teaching finance in workplaces because everyone needed it.
Of course.
And then last year, the growth of our social media arm kind of went off, and I had an Instagram on about pay slips went viral, and over a weekend I went from, I think it was 3,500 followers to 40,000 by the Sunday.
How was that? Did you just wake up and look at your Instagram?
Oh, no, it was,
You just
I
saw it go
tracked
up.
it. I was so it was a Friday night and I was at my friend's 30th, and I was trying so hard to be invested in this weekend away because it was her 30th and it was going to be amazing, and it was a wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
But I noticed that the video on the payslips was getting more views than any other reel I'd ever done.
And you hadn't done anything different per se?
Slightly. I'd done some more work on like the footage was cleaner, the audio was cleaner. I'd really tried to level up my Instagram over the last few months leading up to that. And basically, yeah, I just watched this video go like 10,000 views, 20,000 views, 100,000 views.
Wow.
And my following just aligned so quickly with that. And I went from 3.5 and then suddenly it was 10,000. And my partner was saying, oh my goodness, like you've got 10,000 followers. So all my friends were like, oh my God, have you seen your Instagram? And I was like, yes, I'm watching it. And
that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Kind of scary, but
very scary. I think by the Sunday we had maybe 40,000 followers, and I do this thing called the Sunday quiz where I ask questions on a Sunday, 6 questions, multiple choice.
Yeah.
And the week before, I think realistically I maybe had 20 people doing it. It was mainly my friends, maybe my dad.
Yeah.
Like that was a level.
Yeah.
And then the weekend after we had, I think, like 400 people do it, which was, for me, was mad. Like that 400 complete strangers were doing the Sunday quiz.
I find it so crazy how the algorithm does that.
Yeah. I think it was because genuinely at this time, so it was last July time, that direct to camera kind of instant approach was only just starting. A lot of people do it now and it's very common, kind of speak to camera, clean audio, clean visual. But then it was quite new, and I was basically taking a subject that no one had explained before, which was pay slips, and just explaining it. It wasn't rocket science. I was just kind of saying it, and it just all hit at the right time. And cut to now. So we're in obviously May time now of 24. So just almost a couple months off of a year from when that happened, and we're now on 140,000. I think the last Sunday we had like almost 2,000 people do the Sunday quiz, which for me is like a metric, because yes, having 140,000 followers is amazing, that community we're building, but it's the engaged community. It's those people that come back and keep educating themselves that are really important, and those people that do the Sunday quiz, like, and that's through to the end, those 6 questions. And I love it. It's a real passion, and through running a business as opposed to a charity, I can have a much bigger impact.
As you said, it wasn't rocket science to you to just explain things like payrolls and pensions and stuff like that, but there's literally no one doing that. And I just think everyone has a student loan, pretty much everyone at every university, and no one really has a clue about what we're going to do afterwards. No one's really told us how to manage that. No one really speaks to even like 21-year-olds in a relatable way about finance, which everyone needs to start knowing now. Paying your taxes, doing all this stuff. We weren't really taught that at school. You didn't have to pay attention. But I went and obviously looked on your page, and it's so easy because you're not taking up too much of someone's time. But also there's this misconception that things like taxes and learning about your finance is really just, it is another language that's so complex, and you just shut off before you even think you can understand it. But you explain it in such a relatable way, which is so important.
Thank you, that's so kind of you. The most recent addition to Elent is we are building an app, because I realised that, you can get as much as you can from Instagram. But, because of the algorithm, sometimes videos aren't always shown to everyone, and, certain things might not be what you're looking for, and you want something that can kind of zoom in on the topics that you're interested in. And with the app, we've effectively built like this catalogue of my brain into the app, with some incredible other accountants that are also involved. And we have deposited all of that information into easy bite-sized courses and quizzes and information that you can kind of check in on like a weekly or even daily basis, increasing your financial education in a safe place that's not also giving you like ads and constant adjustments. It's actually just giving you what you need in an unbiased way, because we are financial education. We are not advisors. We are not your accountant.
That's very important.
And it is so important, because there are many advisors out there, and great, but not everyone wants an advisor. They want to actually understand and not have it feel more complicated than when it started.
Not biased.
Exactly. You want to make your own decisions. And I think that's so important for the next generation as well. I think, you know, Gen Z and Gen A will change the world. The reason I feel like that is because you are willing to ask questions, which for some reason our generation just were a bit nervous to do. I think it was, for us as millennials, it was still just about accepting the way things were and being like, okay, well, we'll do the traditions and we'll accept that this is just the way it is. But actually, your generation is saying, no, I don't accept that. I want more for my life, or I want to understand. You can't complicate this. You need to make it easier. And I think that's the best thing about you guys, for sure.
But I think a big part of why my generation, or at least my friends, my uni mates, scared around finance is because they don't know who to trust. You're told, obviously, don't trust anyone, especially when you have no idea with like the finance kind of world. Who are you going to trust? Because advisors will just be biased. You're not going to really think that they're the best people to go to.
With some advisors, obviously, some advice can be helpful sometimes if you really don't have the capacity all the time and you need to get things done. But yeah, like I said, I think it's just about giving people a helping hand and being like, don't worry, you can do this yourself, like let me help you, rather than just ignore it and put it under
even if it's like going to help them understand the FT a bit more.
Gosh, the FT is full of jargon.
Exactly.
I do love the Financial Times, but I do this thing mornings, so I do the Morning Stars, where I wrap up the finance news of the day into like 3 easy chunks.
I love that.
Thank you.
Because everyone's going to be on their Instagram, Gen Z. You're probably not going to be looking at the FT as much, and it's kind of a chore. It's already part of your routine to just wake up and look at Instagram. You're basically doing the FT, but you're making everyone's lives easier.
Exactly. This is the thing. I feel like it's just so much easier to like nab it and grab those pieces of information and just get it out to people, because often people don't read the news, because in its defense it's really dull and also really depressing at the moment. Like whilst it's really important for us to engage in, you know, the war in the Middle East and understanding what's going on there, when it comes to finance, often it's all the other news is so overwhelming that we then don't listen to that part. And actually there's some really key bits in there that everyone needs to understand.
I agree. And I think the Financial Times, I'll just look at the bit that they send you on your email and not like the full thing. But that's enough sometimes for me. But it's so complex, the words sometimes I don't really understand. Just going back to starting a business, where did Elent come from? Like, where was the name?
The name stands for elegant and intelligent. So,
oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
but I love
it's
that.
a combination of the two words, elegant and intelligent combined, and it's because most finance businesses are very masculine. You've got the words like bank and finance and fintech, and it's very masculine and quite
harsh.
Yeah, quite harsh. And actually, I wanted something feminine and elegant. But the intelligent element is still really important. Just because it's elegant and feminine doesn't make it any less intelligent.
Exactly.
And also, I just wanted a word that kind of meant nothing but everything at the same time. Because
I didn't know that.
We've got the likes of, you know, Google. Google doesn't mean anything.
True.
But, you know, we are building... I want to build something that lives beyond me, that's educating the next generation and the generation beyond.
Yeah.
And that Ellen is a core staple of people's lives. And it's just where you get your finance education.
Yeah.
And you trust it and you know it's going to be there for you. And so for me, if I'd called it, I don't know, Abigail's Finance, it can't outlive me.
No.
But Ellen can. I hope it does.
I love that. I didn't actually know that that's what the name meant. So you need to help us out, Abby.
Yes.
Because me, amongst many others, are going to finish uni and are already having many panic attacks about finishing.
Yes.
But when we come out with debt, what are we actually supposed to do? Like, how do we manage? If you have got a job, hopefully that would make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But when you get out, what's the yearly amount you should be paying off? Like, how does that even work? Try and break it down for us if you can.
Of course I can, and I will. So the things you need to remember, the most important, is you do not pay back your degree loan, so your student debt, until the April after you finish uni. So for instance, with yourself, you're finishing this year. You won't see or shouldn't see any student loan deductions until next April.
Why is that?
It's just a rule that basically the deductions only start from the next tax year, and the tax year starts on the 6th of April. So if anyone, you, your friends, get your first pay slip and your new job and you're seeing student loan deduction, No.
Okay,
You need to get that off and get your money back from the student loans company. You have this kind of grace period after you finish uni between now and next April before you have to start paying it back. So that's the first really important thing. If at any point you think you're overpaying your student loan and you don't want to be, contact your student loan company, get that money back. It's your money.
Don't be afraid.
Never ever be afraid. It's not as hard and like difficult as it's made out to be. You just need to contact them. You can even ring them and just say, I've overpaid and I didn't mean to be. Like, I had it deducted from my payslip and shouldn't have. So that's the first part. The second part is how you repay. So you will be on what's known as Plan 2. So there are a number of different plans now. So Plan 1 was anyone that went to uni pre-2012. We, because I actually started in 2012, are on Plan 2. So anyone between 2012 and 2023. That's if you started between those, which you started before 2023. We're on Plan 2. So that means our threshold is 27,295. So you don't pay any student loan back until you're earning more than £27,295 a year.
Maybe it was last year. I remember the government said you're paying more on the pound than they are.
So what happens right now is the debt is actually quite heavily weighted on the taxpayer because the government absorb a lot of the debt because we don't pay as much of it back as we should. With the new Plan 5, so for anyone that went to uni from 23 onwards, their threshold has been dropped to 25,000 and the repayment years has been extended, which I'll come back to. The reason that's happened, the reason they've created this new Plan 5 for the new students is because they're trying to shift the kind of onus of the student debt back onto the student by making it quicker for them to repay and they have to repay for longer.
Yeah.
But going back to us, which is Plan 2, so that is anyone that went to uni, started uni pre-2023.
Okay.
27,295, that's the number to remember. If you are not earning more than that, you should not be paying back your student loan. And unfortunately, it's not done front-loaded in the sense that it's not until you start earning over that you repay. It's done, if you imagine 27,295 divided by 12, that's your monthly amount. If you're going over that, then you start to repay. And it is a percentage over that, and it's 9% for everyone. So it's 9% if you earn £30,000, let's say, you would do 30,000 less the threshold of 27,295 and times that by 9%. Okay? I think roughly works out about £20 a month of student debt. If you're on 30k, which, you know, probably not straight out of uni, but 2-3 years in, it works out about £20 a month off your payslip.
That sounds a lot more manageable when you break it down like that.
Yeah. It is a threshold tax. It isn't a debt in the same way credit card debt is a debt. Because if you can't afford to repay it, so you're not earning over 27,295, you don't pay it. And you only pay it determined on how much you earn. So the more you earn, so let's say, you know, eventually you are earning 6 figures, you're on 100,000 a year. That's when you start to see huge chunks because it is 9% of the difference of those two numbers. It's always a threshold. And so that's the kind of second element in the sense of you repay it 9% over that threshold. And the third element is the repayment years. So your years start from when you leave uni and you have 30 years. And if you haven't repaid the loan in 30 years, it gets wiped. If you choose to pay it off earlier, that's absolutely fine. But 30 years is the Plan 2 years. If you were on the new Plan 5, that actually got increased to 40 years. So you can see obviously what they were doing with Plan 5 was to effectively increase the length of time.
And what happens if you don't pay it off in the 30 years? Is that pretty common?
It's relatively common, actually. You know, if you're in a career that might not be hitting the 6 figures, you might find that after 30 years you haven't repaid. Or if you take huge unpaid care leave, which, you know, happens to many women if you decide to be an unpaid carer, which is effectively motherhood.
Yeah.
You might take huge breaks and therefore not hit that age or hit that criteria. Okay. But for most people, if you're going to uni and you are applying for those graduate schemes and you're working your way up the ladder, there is a huge chance you will repay this. And like I said, you can repay it early. I would never advise anyone anything, especially not on a podcast. Yeah. But the education behind it is do research. Don't just overpay because you have a little bit of extra money, because that extra money might be better spent elsewhere.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question.
Yeah.
What if you want to just pay a chunk
Yeah.
early and you're like, okay, I'm halfway there or something. But I guess, what if you need that later?
Yeah, I would
Maybe put it in
say
savings.
if you're on that trajectory, you're earning six figures and you've got the income, the kind of flexible income to pay off chunks because you know it's going to make sense for you just to reduce the payments coming out of your payslip effectively earlier, it may be worth it. But early on in your career, I would always say, please do the maths because it might not be worth it. And I think a lot of young people fear this debt and go, right, I'm going to pay it off as quick as I possibly can. Don't panic. Yes, the only caveat to this is it does accrue interest over time, but this is the cheapest debt that any of us will ever have because it is a threshold kind of tax as opposed to a debt. And you repay that and voluntarily repay it, you don't get your money back. Like if you go, actually, I needed that 20k in 2 years' time, the student loans company say, well, you've given it to us, that's it. Versus if you keep hold of it, that's yours and you can use it for a house deposit or whatever you need to use, and that student debt is still going to just be trickling out of your payslip. It is a hugely personal decision. You have to look into it on a person by person basis, but the most important elements of it are, please be aware of the threshold because some people often overpay because they don't reach over it. Secondly, you shouldn't pay anything back until the April after.
That's really important.
Yeah.
No one told us that.
And then thirdly is those repayment years. Like just knowing roughly when yours is going to end, because some people get caught out and they keep paying even though they've actually hit those 30 years.
That's so bad.
I know obviously you're only just leaving uni, so 30 years seems a way away. But as someone that has already been out of uni, like, almost 10 years, those years do fly.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. That's why everyone needs to know what's going on with that. But I think a lot of people get stressed about when you just said the only issue is it does accumulate interest.
Yes.
And interest, I guess, might be a scary thing for people, but it's probably not like huge amounts of interest.
So for plan 2, it is RPI up to RPI plus 3%. And RPI is called Retail Price Index, better known as inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a high interest because obviously we saw the highs of that 11.1% kind of inflation figures a few years ago. So it can go high, but they have now capped it because of that kind of weird situation. They've capped it, I think, around 7%. I can find out the exact number, but the interest rate can go up and it can go down. It's tracked against inflation figures.
We just got to keep paying it off.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's called student debt. I think really, especially if myself and Martin Lewis, patron saint of finance himself, had anything to do with it, you'd rebrand it as kind of university tax because it is a kind of tax you have to pay to go. There is something to be said as well about going to university can increase your chances, obviously, of a higher salary. And to get that benefit does cost money. Like universities do cost money to run. It costs money for you to go.
That's an interesting way to think about it, yeah.
Exactly. And you have to kind of think, well, is this going to benefit me? Which is why I'm really aware when I go into schools and I speak to that sixth form age bracket to talk about other options.
Yeah.
Apprenticeships, scholarships and sponsorships, ways that you can reduce that cost to yourself. Is it essential? Do you need that degree? Because, for instance, with myself, I loved uni. I really did.
I'm so sad that it's over.
Yeah. I think by the end of my third year, I was kind of done, to be honest. But I did love my time there. Did I learn 20, what was my, 38 to 40,000 pounds worth of education? Not sure. Not entirely sure. I think I've learnt more in the last 2 years of running my business and the last 4 years of finishing my ACA and then starting Elent than I did at uni, if I'm honest. But for me, that it was worth it because I knew...
It's everything else.
Yeah, it's everything else. And for me, I had a real trajectory. I wanted to do accountancy, then get my graduate scheme in accountancy, then do this and then do that. My career has gone very squiggly ever since.
Yeah.
But that was where I planned to go. So that made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not something to be scared about. And we shouldn't feel pressured when paying it off. Do your own research. Depends on each person.
Yeah. This is all person by person basis. Never advise anything. And also, if anyone is ever advising you when it comes to student loan, be very cautious.
Yeah.
But like you said at the beginning, don't be scared. You shouldn't be scared of money or finance in general. It's just about adding a bit more education. Listening to this, hopefully what it will do is then help people to understand that the student debt is just a kind of threshold tax.
Yeah,
and
it's the name debt that sounds so scary, though. It is.
It is, of course it is. And it's this looming thing after uni that how do you pay it off as quickly as possible? But really, that's not always the aim of the game for many people. The aim of the game is to love your job and find a career that you're passionate about. Really, that's the aim of finishing uni, not running towards like paying off debt, because that's quite
and
depressing.
£20 a month. That's so manageable. We can so do that.
Exactly, and like you earn a little bit more, you pay a little bit more. It's fine.
We can do that.
Yeah, I think just don't over panic. Just do more education, I think is kind of my slogan, to be honest.
Well, I feel like that's definitely broken it down, and it makes it sound so much less stressful, because I'm sure everyone's worrying about that. As we have you on here, if not everyone is into finance and you're into other things, you're probably thinking, I just heard that finance bro, like TikTok trend. What do you think about the trend? Or have you ever thought, I want to do that?
Yeah, I just fit into your 20s, by the way, because obviously this is a 20s podcast.
Well, you don't look it. You look like you could have come to Knots with me.
Thank you. That makes me feel great. We've had that TikTok trend with that girl who was like, I'm looking for a man in finance.
I find it
6'5".
so crazy.
Honestly, it's hilarious. She is now like signed a record deal with like Warner Brothers or something.
No way, I didn't know
they've
that.
now got they've got the rights to like the song, and I think it is hilarious. I think these trends will come up and come down. Like, a few months or a few years ago, it was like girl math, wasn't it?
Yeah, and
finance,
girl dinner.
Yeah,
that stuff.
Exactly, and finance bros. And whenever I ask in schools, I ask people to tell me like what they think of when we think of finance, and someone will always say like a gilet or a quarter zip, which is like like they're things, they're not finance.
Yeah, they're not.
But there is this stigma of this certain type of person that goes off and studies finance. But the one thing that everyone will start to realise once they leave uni is how broad finance is. I studied accountancy, and that's actually a very, very small part of finance. I think a lot of people think accountants is finance, and we are a very small kind of element of what finance can be in general, because you can go within finance, you can go into practice or industry. So I started off in a general practice where you're kind of doing Mr. and Mrs. Smith's bookkeeping. Then I went into industry and I worked at Condé Nast and worked for the Vogue magazine and looked at the finance behind that magazine. And I'm still an accountant. Some people in accountancy will go into practice in like the big four, like EY, KPMG, and work in audit, for instance, where you are auditing other people's financial accounts. And then on the flip side of that, you can go completely rogue in finance or completely different to accountancy and be in like private equity or be an advisor, be in mortgages, be a consultant. There is so many, finance is so broad. You can even go into fintech now, which is this really new era of finance, which is like the financial technologies.
Like Monzo and stuff.
Yeah, so these neobanks like Monzo, Starling, Zopa, all these neobanks are kind of building off of fintech and like building good technology that helps people manage their finances. It's kind of what we're trying to do with Elent, with the app, is build like a fin ed tech, and how can we build something that's purpose-led and helps people, But yeah, the finance bros trend, I think, fortunately, actually, the world of finance is changing to favour a more feminine approach. So talking back to that finance bro, like gilets, quarter zips, it's very masculine, and actually the world of finance is changing to be more feminine, and I love that. Me because too. Actually we need more feminine investors. We need more females at board level. We need more female CEOs, because that's the only way we're going to see huge change in this industry. And the gender pay gap's not going away. It then breeds the gender investment gap, the gender pension gap. And I think the finance bros is funny, but it's not actually what we need to enact change. We need finance queens.
Everyone's like, I want a finance bro because they've got money and stuff, and I hope to find a husband in finance. But I think that just blows steam up like these guys, confidence. So we need some more women in it so they can be humbled. But I wonder if men in your industry have come up to you and talked down to you or mansplained to you, or you felt like, I actually know what I'm talking about, but don't talk down to me.
All the time.
Yes.
Men starting to change, but unfortunately, yes, a lot of men will come up and talk at me about finance and don't realise what I do for a living.
That must be fun when you get to say, actually.
Yes, actually, I am an accountant. Did do those extra 14 exams, and actually, I teach finance on telly. I teach finance on the radio.
Yeah.
I am an expert in my field. And I think it catches people off guard. And I do silently find it quite funny. But it's really sad at the same time. And I hope to be opening the door so that many, many other women behind me do not have to tread the same steps I've had to do, because having to explain yourself over and over again is so boring. Like
exhausting.
It's exhausting. And so what I really hope with what we're doing here is that it will just be assumed that men and women know exactly the same when it comes to finances. We don't need to second guess the next generation. Whereas unfortunately with our generation, it's assumed that boys are having these conversations, but not necessarily that women are.
I agree. And I definitely still feel like that at university.
Yeah.
But I'm still on a male dominated course.
Yeah.
So I just think hopefully someday we can change this for the better.
Of course.
I wanted to ask what I always ask my guests when we wrap up the podcast, and that is, what is the best piece of advice you've learned in your 20s so far that you can share to my listeners?
Be comfortable making mistakes. Have you had that before?
No.
Okay.
But you're obviously, more experienced than all of my friends because we're literally 21.
Yeah. So if I could go back to my 20-year-old self, I would say make more mistakes. I was making mistakes often, but really telling myself off about it. If I failed an exam, which to be ACA qualified, to be a chartered accountant, you have to do 14 more exams post-uni. And
you're not done. You're nowhere near done when you finish uni.
Don't. It was miserable. It was so, 3, almost 4 years. Sometimes I felt like I was just kind of living to sit more exams.
I'm so happy I don't have to probably do another exam.
No, you couldn't pay me any money to go back in time and do that again. But what I wish I could say to my 20-year-old self, it's okay to fail. Whereas my problem was, if I failed, it would ruin weeks, months of my life.
Yeah.
And actually, I wish I could go back and be like, when you're sad, be sad. Be like Beyonce says, just take a day, look after yourself. But come back fighting. Don't let it ruin a day. Don't let it ruin a month. Don't let it ruin a year, because it can be really easy to think that you're behind when you're 20s. But actually, these are the years for you to make as many mistakes as possible, because it resets when you turn 30.
You don't really want to be making mistakes when you're 60.
No, exactly. I know it feels novel to say make mistakes, but actually we're going to make them anyway. So make as many as you can. Have a really squiggly career as well. See as much as you possibly can. Adjust what looks right to you. Even if you love your job, but you're like, I love the company, but I want to do something slightly different. Create your job. Create something different for yourself. And get out there and network as well, because I think my network has been one of the biggest successes to my business, is the people I know along the way that can support you and help you. And never afraid to reach out to people as well. The worst that happens is they don't reply. That is the worst that happens. Or they reply saying, no, I don't have time.
I think girls are so scared to do that, women. And you're just pigeonholing yourself when really everyone has their own rights to speak up.
Of course they do.
Even if you're fresh out of uni.
Yeah. Look at this, for instance. Obviously, you reached out and I was like, yeah. Because I love doing anything for the next gen. And actually, usually I don't do podcasts anymore for loads of reasons.
I feel very special.
Oh, thank you. Well, there's loads of reasons why I don't do it anymore. But because you reached out, I was like, well, yeah, the confidence enough to contact me and do this is great. And of course I'm going to support you. And you'll be amazed that when you reach out to other women that are treading this track already, how willing they will be to help you. Because I wish I'd asked more women growing up for more support. And I'm asking them now. And oh my goodness, it's brilliant. And, men have had this for years. But for some reason, we're only just cottoning onto it. But they are networks. And actually, you can build your own, build one that suits you as well. If you are interested in Formula One, there will be a group of women that
100%.
Exactly, they're equally interested in that. Or show jumping, we were talking about. There'll be a group of women. Find your group. So yeah, my advice to my 20-year-old self, or for people in their 20s, is make more mistakes.